valuable on the internet. It can be collected, analyzed, sold, or stolen. Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN.
So thanks, Crypto Rich, for having me on and giving me the chance to present this community presentation. My name is on here for everybody to just see that I'm Mike Toutonghi, lead developer of the Verus project, but this is actually a community presentation that's available for anyone to get and present. And so I'm going to just run through it real quickly so that we can give people an overview. Now, first, just an intro into the Verus project. We launched Mainnet May 21st, 2018, without an ICO, without a pre-mine, without a developer fee or founder's fee of any kind. And the goal was really just a worldwide, fair launch in the spirit of Bitcoin. And we, gave notice, started mining and staking when the rewards started at 0, and then they went up, and we first time locked the earlier larger rewards to some random time, as you know. I think you might even have gotten some of those. And now we are cranking along after 3 years and have done some amazing work to realize the vision that we described in the vision paper. In fact, right now, I'm going to go through what we've got. And we have really built all of the technology plus more that we described in the vision paper, which we released about a month and a half after Mainnet. So, and again, that was vision. We've done this as a community. That was not a roadmap. The goal was not to say there is some centralized team of people who are going to do this. The goal was to say, here's our vision for what this can be. Come join us, and let's make it happen together and succeed in this together. And what I'm really happy about is that many people in the world are doing that. So we are here because of all those people. So the consensus algorithm is a 50% proof of work and 50% proof of stake algorithm. This does a few things for us. It is the math that we use and the algorithm that we use is a provably hash attack resistant algorithm, provably 51% and more hash attack resistant algorithm, because of how it actually weighs and decides what's the best chain. It uses something that we refer to as power, which is a combination of proof of work and proof of stake power. So, so that's the core consensus algorithm, and there's a lot more to it than that. But I'm not going to go into depth there because we're going to go through kind of the key features. So what we did a little over a year ago, actually probably 2 years ago, we developed the technology, and then a little over a year ago, released this technology to Mainnet, where it is now, and it's been for some time. And we have tens of thousands of IDs live and purchased and being used on Mainnet. I actually had a nephew lose access to his funds that were on his ID, and I happened to have his revocation authority, and so was able to revoke and recover his funds and make him really happy. So I've heard other people who have revoked and recovered either identity or funds, and so people have really used this already, in ways that matter to people, that really matter. And so it's really the only crypto address, because it is both an identity and a crypto address. And in fact, in our wallets, it can be used across multiple crypto blockchains or crypto systems. But it's the only real crypto address that provides revocation and recoverability. So if you lose your keys and you've set up a revocation authority and a recovery authority, then you can revoke and recover. And those can also be completely self-solving. If you, in the new version, and I'm going to mention this and then move on, in the upgrade that's coming, we also have Verus Vault, which is, it's the ability to time lock an identity and to time lock it such that when you decide that you want to spend from it, so when it's locked, it can't spend, but it can stake. So it can make money for you, but you cannot take money out of it. If you unlock it, you have to wait for a pre-specified amount of time before you can spend. And that means that if someone steals your keys and you don't even know they stole your keys, that before they can take anything from your identity, any money or anything, they have to unlock your identity, which is a blockchain operation. You can see that. You can revoke and recover your identity. No harm that they were able to do. It's interesting because you can actually use this capability to be really theft, like you can make completely theft-proof workflow. And interestingly, you could use it to solve the $5 wrench attack. Because if your currency is locked for 12 hours a day, so that when you decide you want access to, the bulk of your funds, whether they're in whatever currency you hold them in, in the multi-currency version, they can be on the VRSC blockchain held on an ID. So if you decide that you have 12 hours before you can access your funds, there is no such thing as a $5 wrench attack that can take your funds, because it's got to be a kidnapping. And that is the only reason, actually, like that is the only way that banks claim that they solve a $5 wrench attack, really. It's the fact that you simply just can't give them your money unless they commit a much more serious crime, which is no longer the $5 wrench attack. So anyways, just a little, not as pleasant as all the other things, but a little aside that we actually
useful.
Address the $5 wrench attack, as well as make a theft-proof workflow model. So, while not preventing you from making money on your funds. So identities do that, but they also give you a lot more. So what they really give you is they give you a root for provable information. You get a digital signature. If you've got a multi-sig identity, you get a multi-sig digital signature. So if you make your identity for a company and you make it like a 3 of 5 signer, then the signature of your identity must include 3 of 5 signers. You get the ability to launch a currency or to launch a blockchain on the blockchain where you have an identity. So if you have an identity on the VRSC blockchain, you can launch a currency on the VRSC blockchain. If somebody makes a PBAS blockchain with their identity and you get an identity on their blockchain or on that other blockchain, maybe it's a worldwide open source community blockchain, if you get an identity there, you'll be able to start a currency there of that identity, of that name. And then, that really gives you a complete namespace, and there's more to it, but I'm gonna move on from identities here, and just talk about some of the other features, because we're not gonna take a lot of time going through this. So in addition to the VRSC ID and all of the capabilities around that self-sovereign identity technology, we also have another, and in addition to the multi-currency technology, we also have another capability, which people are referring to as an L0 capability these days, because a few projects are figuring out how to launch a connected chain or two, which is great. We're seeing a connected chain being launched and everybody's happy about that. And that's good, because we know that then they'll be happy about the fact that we really have an unlimited ability for everyone to self-sovereignly launch connected chains from other chains using the VRSC ecosystem without having to be the highest bidder of all the VCs. Actual normal people can figure out how to get their project off the ground with a blockchain that includes all of the capabilities of VRSC, except in the first version that this is out, launching new chains will be a capability on VRSC and not the new chains until the next upgrade, or the upgrade that will make the system fractal. Meaning those new chains will also then be able to launch chains and et cetera, ad infinitum. Basically leading to a no scale limit system, because everything can talk to each other. So, so let's talk about scale. What does this really mean? Well, so if you think about, I've seen a lot of numbers being thrown around for Visa transaction per second. And there was an article that there's a link down here for that article from 2018, where they confirmed 1,700 transactions per second on the Visa network. Now, I believe it's going to be higher than that. I've heard, claims of 14,000, and I've heard claims up to as high as 65,000 transactions per second. For me, it doesn't really matter because none of those are hard to achieve, actually. They could be hard to achieve in today's systems, but with our architecture, they're actually not that hard to achieve. So the bottom line is, if you look at blockchains, blockchains, it's one of the things that people think is a weakness of blockchains. I would just say it's a weakness of how people use blockchains today. But let's just say it's a weakness of blockchains right now, and let's just kind of look at that for a minute. So the Bitcoin blockchain, let's say from 7 to 15 transactions per second. The numbers I get are around 7, but let's just give it the benefit of the doubt, say from 7 to 15. Ethereum, the numbers I see are around 23. Let's say 25 transactions per second. Maybe it's a tiny bit more, maybe it's a tiny bit less, but that's probably about right. Then Verus, these are also somewhat back of the envelope, but they're based on real world transaction size with real world limits on the blockchain, and the fact that there's a minute block time. And we have a bandwidth for normal, real world transactions on the chain of about 100 transactions per second. But here's the thing. You can launch interoperable blockchains from the Verus blockchain. And each one of those interoperable blockchains can have the same bandwidth, 100 transactions per second. But it can also send transactions back and forth between Verus and bouncing through to the other blockchains as well. And so the total network bandwidth actually is the total of all of the connected blockchains that can send to each other. And in fact, the entire crypto network, all blockchains in crypto, if they were all really an internet of chains that people say they're making, whether they are or not, we wouldn't really be as focused about the bandwidth of a single blockchain, because that's a maximalist model anyways. And as people learn more and more, they're realizing the future is probably going to be, not probably, it's going to be a multi-currency future. And any network that thinks it is the only currency that will be in the world is just going to have a little bit of an awakening at some point, And so the idea that, boy, we need to make the single Bitcoin blockchain scale, well, maybe we don't. The idea that we need to make the single Ethereum blockchain scale, well, actually, I think that Vitalik and the developers there, they've got a sharding plan. And, I can't say if I would at all agree with the final architecture that they're going to end up with. But at some point, they're basically going to be scaling in a way that's very similar to having many chains, but they're going to divide up what runs on what chain based on these dynamic things. It creates a lot of problems. Whereas what we're doing is actually, and I'm not saying that it's all wrong. I'm saying I wouldn't do it that way. I don't think it's correct. I don't think it's a natural scaling approach. It's more of the kind of approach that you would say if your first principle was, we must centralize on my coin. If you say that, then you immediately want to solve every problem that isn't really just about scale. It's about scale as long as everyone is using my coin. So you put another constraint on it. Then you end up with magical sharding with lots of complexity behind the scenes. When in fact, if you say, well, the economy is really made of people. And if value can flow like water between currencies, and projects and economies are represented on blockchains, and sub-economies, microeconomies, even macroeconomies are represented on blockchains, then if you have an infinitely scalable system that's kind of grows like a fractal and has different native currencies kind of for each part of it, you could use one currency across the whole thing. But the truth is, what I believe is going to happen is human society will just organize naturally around economies that both represent, what they're buying and selling, their fields of interest, their interests period, their communities that they identify with. And the bandwidth is just going to be decentralized. Imagine that. And that's the model that I believe is the right model in the long run. And yes, we can scale up and make the biggest internet computer in the world and get tons and tons of money from all the VCs and go out and say that we have the solution to crypto because we have a big 870 node, supercomputer running in the sky. But geez, we've got thousands and thousands. I don't know the total size of our network, but last time we had checked, which was over a year ago, it's really a strong decentralized network. We had 5,000 nodes when Bitcoin had 10,000 at one point.
Wow.
And so obviously we're not a force of, financial network like Bitcoin, but we do have a lot of nodes worldwide because we are completely decentralized, And so we don't need an internet computer because we've got Raspberry Pis and we've got, notebooks, and we probably got your MacBook. I don't know. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Yeah, there we go. And so we've got like all over the world, we've got all of these people running their computers, and that's power. That's really power. And I'm going to tell you why in a minute, because on this next slide, so as soon as this hits mainnet, we will be running our 100 transaction per second blockchain, which is still nothing to sneeze at, on an infinitely scalable network. Not infinite until we go fractal. I back up. The protocol allows infinite scalability. The initial launch, it would scale past the 65,000 transaction per second limit mathematically, but I'm not, it's just highly scalable, let's say.
Yep.
And we are going to have so much extra bandwidth. Every single node and miner and pool will be able to mine up to 22 blockchains at a time, and they're only doing one. So we're going to have like 21 extra slots for everybody to put their hash power on different things. And, if we wanted to bring up, like if Elon Musk wanted us to bring up a Doge chain or wanted to do it himself, he doesn't need to talk to us, to bring up a Doge chain, which would sell .doge IDs and which would, have the same, they've got a minute block time, they've got a reward, 10,000 Doge a block. Who cares? He could do that. He could do all those things. And he could have everybody on Doge actually running on a much better chain, which would use way less electricity. And he wouldn't have to go bad-mouthing Bitcoin or anything else because he'd be so happy with his own Doge, running on an actual high technology chain. But we could do that. Like, we don't even need another network to power it. Like, we could literally power, a Doge blockchain worldwide without in any way impacting the Verus network whatsoever. And we could process then, all of the transactions that anybody runs on Doge, and it wouldn't be a problem, So probably I said just way too much about Doge right now. But my point is that there's a lot of power on this network that will go live when Mainnet goes live, and we will have a network with power that I don't think any other network has. And we need to think of some really interesting, there are going to be projects that are going to be using it, but there's not really a limit. So so there's going to be a relatively high price on starting a new connected blockchain. It's not going to be a bid. It's not going to be centralized. Nobody's going to get to stop someone who wants to start a blockchain this way. And there's no rent. They don't pay anything on an ongoing basis whatsoever. There's a fee, though, to start it. That's 10,000 Verus. And the reason that fee is 10,000 Verus is really to prevent people from doing this frivolously. That's really it. Because we could handle probably a couple thousand chains, without, actually I'd say maybe 1,000 chains without kind of any noticeable congestion or any issue. We could probably handle 1,000 chains before we go fractal in the ecosystem. But I'd like to see a very small number of really good, high quality projects. And I think we all would, which is why as a community, we agreed that we should probably have the price right around 10,000 because it would just prevent, frivolous chains.
Can the fee change? Because if Veruscoin were to become really, really expensive.
Yeah, that's a good question, because so the identity is 100 Verus to get an identity, and then 80 Verus if you have a referral, and then you can earn from referrals. And there's no center, so it's not like it's just at the edge for helping people to get the word out. But launching a PBaaS chain, the question isn't. It will be cheap when we go fractal, just like the moment this stuff goes to mainnet, the capabilities of a VRSID you'll be able to get from any PBaaS chain. You won't be able to get your root Verus name on another PBaaS chain, but you will be able to get revocability, recoverability, your signature, your multi-signature, transferability, provability of data, all of these, association of a profile, all these different things that you can do, and your namespace, and the ability to launch currencies, etc. In the same way, so right now, we don't have a problem as a community lowering the price if we believe that we're successful in in this first launch preventing frivolous projects, right? But when we come out with the fractal model, the price is going to be not just the price on Verus, it's going to be every other blockchain in the Verus ecosystem will be able to set a price for launching a connected blockchain. And you might then be like, one hop away from Verus. Because when you transfer when you do a cross-chain send, you can actually have it hop through more than one chain if you need to. So like if Solana connects to Verus or say another Ethereum like project connects to Verus, or any project just connects to Verus, then they also can bounce through Verus to go back and forth between Ethereum as well. Or Ethereum can bounce through Verus to go back and forth between any connected project to Verus. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like a generalized, crypto industry router at that point, if you want. But the point is that the 10,000 Verus fee for starting a blockchain on Verus, I'm sure there will be some adjustments to the price, but our intention is that it should go down. But if we get 1,000 blockchains that start up, then we may not ever lower the price. You know what I mean? Because at that point, yeah, we're going to increase the capacity. You really could run about 2,000, but once we get to 1,000, then I'm going to start feeling like we're getting too many, until we go fractal. So,
got it.
Yeah. Long answer. Right? All right. So now some people think, when we talk about you can merge mine up to 22 blockchains on a single hash, that means the network is limited to 22 blockchains. But in fact, that isn't true at all, because the network doesn't have a blockchain limit. Your PC has a blockchain limit of how many you get to mine at once. And the really cool thing about that is if you think about the relationship between mining power and transaction processing, there isn't one. It's actually just a fallacy based on the whole maximalist idea that one blockchain must be the only blockchain and everybody has to compete for earning on that blockchain, and that there isn't anywhere else to go with your hash. And so, this makes it really clear when you've got an unlimited blockchain network and you can mine up to 22 chains on it at a time, that there is no direct relationship between hash power and energy and the number of transactions you can process. In fact, blockchains can be inside of a firewall. If you didn't think about this might blow you away a little bit. Okay, so
hold on. Something else about Veruscoin that might blow me away a little.
Oh, it's probably going to really blow you away if you didn't think about this yet. Okay, so here's the thing. You can make this public blockchain as a service, right? But you can also set it such that that blockchain isn't really publicly mineable or stakeable. And that's, again, a transparent thing. So if it isn't publicly mineable or stakeable, what that means is now it still has self-sovereign IDs, but you control the mining and staking, so you do have more control over that network than any normal network. But you can actually have read-only nodes that everybody can sync to. They can actually use it just like they use any other blockchain. But the difference is that there's no external competition for mining the blocks. It's the mining becomes, in this case, I'm not saying that we would do this for public blockchains. I'm saying there's something that's going to enable that I'll explain. So nobody can make you mine blocks that you don't want in the blockchain. And when you mine a block, it's final. You don't need to worry about reorgs. You don't need to worry about confirmation times, because it's on your internal or it could be a government network. It could be a corporate network. And the corporation is not going to reorg their own chain to give themselves a problem. They can just add a block and it's done. Add another and it's done. And so now all of a sudden you can see you still get the ability to do all the DeFi capabilities. You can still do all the things that a normal, PBaaS chain can do, but you have the benefit of centralization and you don't get to say you're decentralized. You have speed because you're centralized and you don't have to coordinate with the rest of the world, but you are transparent and you don't get to say that this is a decentralized mine chain. The thing about this, though, that is interesting is your private chain can carry just as real currencies as your public chain. You can send ETH and Verus and whatever other currencies are compatible with Verus to your private network in your company. You can give them to your manager's IDs with sign-off required, multi-sig required, and they can give them to the people in their company. It could be USDC. And they can give them to the people in their company who will use those funds for whatever their job is. They can spend them on products or orders or whatever it is that they use them for. And there's no need for an accounting system. Because the money is already documented in every place it's gone for your company, even if you use Z transactions, which are auditable, which you can use. Mm-hmm. And so a company that wanted to run 65,000 transactions per second, financial transactions per second on their internal network would just need to run some number of internal PBaaS chains, and that's all. And they could actually do another Visa-like, transaction processing system with the same capabilities and bandwidth, except that they'd have all this ID capability and unlimited currency definitions and the ability to do conversions. And when you're mining on this private chain and you're earning conversion fees, that's real money. It's real money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you can just send it to USDC or ETH or Verus or whatever it is you want to send it to from your private chain.
That's incredible. Okay.
And anybody can do this because when you launch a chain with the command to launch a chain, you can specify the notaries that determine whether or not that private chain is in fact correct. So anybody can actually create a chain that they then decide that they plan to use inside their company, not just as a public chain. But these, 100 transactions per second is actually more bandwidth than most people realize. And most companies don't really need an internal chain unless they have a real reason to use it. Yep. But bigger companies might even have more than one because they can do that too. So
incredible, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah. So was that something that you were aware of, or
no? No,
okay.
I knew there were private blockchains, but I didn't get the interoperability that being able to communicate with public blockchains.
Right. That's the thing that we're bringing to the picture that I don't
generate money.
Exactly. Well, it won't self-generate. What it is that
through the mining.
You can send the money you generate through mining. When you start a new chain, you can financially connect it to the entire financial world, right?
Yep.
Through the public blockchain. And so when you start this new chain, like the money gets in there it's being sent in there, it's being used, it's being moved around. But when it's converted, the same fee model for conversions applies, all these different things. And so when you're mining, almost certainly you're going to make your native currency fungible. So it'll have a liquidity pool, so you can send to other forms of money from that. And when you're mining, all those fees are buying your native currency and emitting it as fees. So you have the same kind of dynamics on an internal private chain with real funds that you have on a public chain. It's just that, you connect through that interoperable gateway that is created when you launch a PBaaS chain.
Yep. Very good.
When you launch a currency or a blockchain, you have the ability to use that event as a crowdfunding process, and it doesn't really have to be for a blockchain project.